I think that Glinda is the villain. So, Carson, I know we've talked a lot on this podcast about our interesting feelings related to live action adaptations of movies. Well, we just got another trailer for another live action Disney movie, and it is also the fastest turnaround time ever for a animated movie to live action. And obviously you know what I'm talking about because we talked about it beforehand, but for the audience, Moana. In fact, it is actually one of my favorite Disney princess movies. I love, well, I guess technically she is a princess, but whatever. I love Moana. I think it is an incredible movie, visually speaking, vocally speaking. The songs are catchy. I think that the storyline is maybe not the best storyline, but it is still a very enjoyable storyline. But it does not need a live action. And I would assume you agree with me.
I can sum it up in one word for you. Money.
Here's the thing, though. They literally just released Moana 2, and it underperformed in theaters.
Hold that thought. Money.
But again, they released Moana 2, the follow-up to one of the best performing Disney movies, and it underperformed, if I remember correctly. So this isn't going to make... You say money, this isn't going to make them money if the other movie that is actually animated didn't make them money.
But hold on, I want you to listen to this. You ready? Ka-ching. Money.
It's not going... Here, it's not... Okay, I can't say it's not because Lilo and Stitch live action was dog shit and it made them money.
Here's what just happened. I was pretending to be a Disney exec pitching this movie, and all they said was money. And you were a fan watching this all happen.
I was
going,
sensible.
It's not going to make money. Absolutely not. You're the one voice of reason. No, look, truth be told, Moana, I think the first one is a lot of fun. I think the second one is very flawed. So much so that I didn't watch it again after it was released. I don't think anybody even remembers that film after it was released. The first one, it was a little past my time of being like, oh, I really like watching the live action Disney film or of watching the animated Disney films. I watch them when I do, and I have appreciation for them now. But like Frozen was like the last one for me where it was like, oh yeah, that's a Disney princess movie that made by Disney that I watch. Moana was good. I really appreciate it. I love the music. I like the type of film that it is. I think it's a lot of fun. We don't need a live action film that is released what is just going to be just barely after 10 years of the release from the animated movie. Furthermore, I don't know how to feel anymore about live action films because we watched How to Train Your Dragon this year, and that was pretty darn good. The one complaint that you and I had about that film was the fact that if the original animated classic hadn't come out 15 years prior, that movie, the new one, would have been a cult classic, and it would have been incredible, blown us all away. The issue is that didn't happen because it was unnecessary because the other one had already transpired and taken place. The exact same thing could potentially happen with Moana here. I'm not going to say it's bad right out the gate. I really have no idea. I think it is, but I really have no idea anymore. It could be really good. The issue is it's not going to be as good as the original. I feel like we're all broken records when we say that, and we're not the only ones to say that either. I can't think of a single human being on this earth who goes, absolutely, I want to see this because this and this and this reason and this reason. I've never once met a human being on earth who has said that.
I think my biggest thing is, like we've both mentioned, it's barely 10 years since the original. And the only acceptable, if you can call it that, excuse that I've heard for the reason these live action remakes are getting made is in order for Disney to hold on to the intellectual property rights of the original, like Cinderella, Snow White, what have you, is they need to continue making content out of it. So therefore, they make live action. That's not the only reason, obviously. Disney likes money. However, I can understand that argument because you're talking about movies that are 70 years old, 50 years old, what have you. Like, Lilo and Stitch isn't that old. Lilo and Stitch is a movie that came out when we were alive. Like, if I'm not mistaken, like, it's a newer movie. Moana came out so recently that I saw it in theaters and have full memory. Like,
Sure.
I'll age myself. I was 13 years old when that movie came out. I'm
Granted,
23 years old now. Like,
I
I
was
don't.
I mean, I was also in theaters when I saw How to Train Your Dragon for the first time, and I have full memory of that. Granted,
I
that's
mean, yeah,
again,
that's
it's still
true.
slightly different. It was a longer period of time than Moana, but it wasn't like it was much longer objectively. It really wasn't. Um, and again, I just think that the issue is that all of the Disney live action remakes, with the exception, I think, of the Cinderella movie they released, which was over 10 years at this point, the Jungle Book movie, which is okay, and aspects of Beauty and the Beast, there's not really any good to come out of any of these live action remakes that have made anybody go, I want to rewatch that again. That is a must rewatch. Or even to further it, and I know it's not live action remakes, but like live action sequels to things that have happened before, like Mary Poppins. The Mary Poppins Returns, just okay. It didn't hurt anything, but it was so unnecessary because it wasn't needed. And again, I know we're a broken record on this podcast saying that, and trust me, we're going to stay that broken record every single time something like this happens. But I don't need this movie to exist. I
Well,
don't.
and to talk about the, like, actual trailer itself, like, movie doesn't look bad. One thing that I do find interesting, like, actually very interesting, is we already know that The Rock is reprising his role
Yeah.
as Maui. They didn't show his face at all. They actually
Yeah.
deliberately didn't show that it was The Rock, which is interesting because I feel like you would want to use The Rock as a big marketing beat for this movie, given that he's The Rock and he's, if I'm correct, like the only person actually reprising his role.
I can look that up and make sure that sounds right though. Um, I don't know why they're doing that. The only thing I
Just
can think of
like,
is that they had like a bodysuit. Why would they have a bodysuit for him? Maybe it's just that they realized how stupid the hair looks and they didn't like on the Rock and they really didn't want to have like a Sonic the Hedgehog freak out moment with the internet where they're like, oh, change it because they literally can't for whatever reason. Here's the other thing. I don't understand. I get that they're trying to make it Disneyfied. I don't think Maui had to have the hair. It could have just been the Rock. Like straight up, it could have
yeah.
just been the Rock. I don't know why it had to be Maui with the long hair and the mane. I don't really feel like that needed to be a thing.
It's for a
Um,
line in the song, you remember when he's describing himself and he describes his mane?
does he?
I,
Are you I about to say I don't even think
yeah,
you're being serious. I don't even know.
but
It's been forever since I've seen that. Um,
from a visual standpoint, the
I didn't
movie
like it.
looks
I couldn't stand it.
it's so hard because I so wanted to say that the movie looked good. But, like, for instance, the scene with baby Moana when she goes into the sea and the sea parts, I hated that. It looked bad.
I actually was gonna say like that shot didn't piss me off as much. I feel like with more time, which they do, that VFX shot could actually look good. The shot with like the army of the like weird small things, I forget what they're called. Uh
Coconut
that
people, I don't know.
coconut people, that looked really bad. And I think the thing that I know for a fact I'm gonna hate is the transformations between whatever animal Dwayne Johnson chooses to be in the moment and then Dwayne Johnson himself. That's gonna look horrendous. And that's probably why they
Yeah.
haven't shown it yet. I will also say I know that I don't know what his name is, but the guy who sings Shiny, the crab thing,
Oh,
that
that's gonna be
that is gonna be really bad. And that is probably why they also haven't shown it in a trailer. But like I said at the beginning of this, it's gonna make money because people want to see live action Moana. I There's no other way to say that. And it it's just another live action remake that doesn't need to happen, but is gonna happen anyway because Disney wants that cash. Um, and again, I'm not saying it can't be good. By all means, it can be good, but there's no shot it's gonna be good and do something different that the original didn't already do. If it's good, it's unnecessary. It's either unnecessary and good, or it's gonna be unnecessary and just complete garbage. It's one of the
the
two.
best the best that this movie can hope for is that it reaches a How to Train Your Dragon live action remake. And we both agreed that movie was really good,
Yeah.
albeit unnecessary. And that movie makes changes. Like, that movie makes some pretty, I'll say, notable changes to the original story that do kind of change your perspective on certain relationships, mainly being Astrid and Hiccup. But I think overall, the movie is still just the first movie.
Yeah.
And so I think that is the best we're going to get out of this is you're going to recontextualize some of the relationships. You're going to give us, I don't even know what the length of this movie is, like if this movie is long or short or whatever, but I just don't, I don't know. I'm not looking forward to it is what I'll say. Like, I wish I could say like, oh, I'm super excited and I'm really like, I would just rather sit down and rewatch the original Moana movie. And I've seen that movie countless times, either at home or when I saw it in theaters.
No, again, I haven't seen the 2014, 2013 Cinderella movie in a long time. I actually am looking at this right now just because I want to make sure that the difference between that movie and like Moana is that at least Cinderella is based off of a fairy tale. I'm not saying some of the other projects haven't. Beauty and the Beast is obviously based off of another tale. Aladdin's based off old older films and also fairy tales, whatever. Not the point. What
Mhm.
is the point is that Cinderella can be told in any fashion and it could be the same story, but you can make it different and interesting enough to work. And that's what works so well for it. You know
Yeah.
what? I'll even go as far as to say is as much as it wasn't my favorite thing in the world, Maleficent was different. Maleficent took the story that we knew of Sleeping Beauty and actually turned it on its head and gave us something new or made us look at it from a different perspective. And the
Mhm.
movie wasn't the worst thing ever. It's not great. It's not what I ever want to rewatch again, like Cinderella, but it's different. Jungle Book also kind of did the same thing, where it told the same story, but it changed up just enough to where it's like, oh, that's kind of fun. This is kind of interesting. The visuals also weren't bad in that movie either. Point being, Moana just has to do so much to get it right, or has to do something different. Like, you don't want to mess up what you already have because what you have is perfect. But if you don't, you're just going to be tossed into the ring as unforgettable, unnecessary. So the biggest thing that they have to do is find a way to make it as prominent as the original, while at the same time doing something different to justify this movie's existence. And I just don't
Yeah,
think
no,
they can do that. I just don't.
I I totally agree with you, and I don't have faith because, like, again, we just saw what they did with the live action Lilo and Stitch. Because here's the notable difference: is we talk about how good How to Train Your Dragon was, and we both loved How to Train Your Dragon, very good movie. That's DreamWorks. That's
Yeah.
not Disney.
Yeah.
We've seen what Disney does when they try to change the core of a movie. You
Yeah.
get Lilo and Stitch and you change too much and you change it in the wrong ways.
You know what?
So
And this will please some people and this will please some fans. Most of the Disney live action remakes, I would rather watch Tron Ares over that again. At least Tron Ares did something different. At least you could.
I
Hey,
that
that was a positive. You can't
that's
be mad. Don't say like that was a
no,
bad thing.
that's a beautiful I we can end the podcast right now. We're ending at episode 38 because God is real, God is good.
It's just
We got Carson
it's the
to
character arc to coming around to liking Tron Ares. That was the whole reason for the
all it took
podcast.
all it took for Carson to admit that Tron Ares isn't bad and is actually a phenomenal movie is to talk about live action Disney
I
movies.
know. I will say that Tron Ares looks like a beaming ray of sunshine compared to some of the ass films that Disney will put out. That's like horrible. At least Tron Ares was different. At least I can say that. At least it was something different.
Fair enough. Yeah, I don't know. It's just so difficult. I we're gonna review it on the podcast, unfortunately. Even though we didn't, well, I was gonna say we didn't review Moana 2, but we didn't have the podcast when Moana 2 existed.
That's fine.
So
My thoughts are that it's meh. Don't need to watch it again. Moving along.
fair enough.
Can't wait.
But
Can't wait for the live action sequel in 3 years.
a sequel that maybe we're excited to talk about is the sequel that we're going to be talking about this week. Because what's up, Nimrods? It's your boys back with another episode of the Nerdy Nimrods podcast, the only podcast on the internet where your two favorite Nimrods talk all things nerdy. I'm your host for today's episode, Brandon, aka Parrotfish, here with my forever co-host,
Carson, aka Juggernaut.
and on today's episode, we will be giving our Wicked and Wicked for Good reviews. Yes, we are giving both because I watched Wicked for the first time literally yesterday. Carson saw it back in theaters when it came out, and we've talked about it ad nauseum, so I already know his thoughts on the movie, and I think he even mentioned them on the podcast last week. I can't remember. But he has no idea any of my thoughts on the first Wicked movie. And we both just and I mean, I walked out of the theaters, got on the metro, set up, and sat down. That is how recently we watched Wicked for Good, because I'm going to be in Philadelphia this weekend. So we're recording this literally immediately after watching Wicked for Good, which I know Carson doesn't like because he wants to collect his thoughts, but I have my thoughts prim proper and ready. So, Carson, before we get into that, before we get into our thoughts on both of these movies, maybe good, maybe bad, who knows? Is it going to be Wicked for good? Is it going to be Wicked for bad? You'll have to find out after I ask Carson how he's feeling.
We're ending the episode there. That was really dumb. Try again.
I thought you were going to like it. I thought you were going to appreciate that.
I can see you're hurt by that. Yes, I really liked that. That was really clever. I appreciate the joke and humor.
Got a real Glinda the good bitch on our hands. Anyways, moving on. Carson, how are you doing?
I'm tired.
We've spoken a lot, and it is Wednesday. We recorded like 3 days ago.
I'm tired. I'm a little sick. And so on top of doing work today, I went and watched this movie, drove home, tried to collect my thoughts. There's no chance in hell I've collected my thoughts. And I turned on my camera and sat down, and I will say this was a bright side. They handed out, I don't know if they did this at your theater, but they handed out like Wicked 3D glasses that they actually said they were only giving out today. Like this was a today only event thing for the premium access event, which is cool. And I promise you that these will sit somewhere in a box for years to come, because I'm never going to leave these out or look at them again. At some point, I'm going to pick it up. The logo's all going to be rubbed off, and I'm going to go, why do I have these green glasses? At what point did I get green glasses? And I'm just going to toss them at some point. I promise you that's probably what's going to happen.
See, it's funny because I forgot to talk about this last week, but to answer your question, yes, I did go to the premium showing, the early, because again, we're recording this on Wednesday. I did it at AMC. Carson has Regal Unlimited, and I got nothing. Funny enough, though, you know what I did get? And I forgot to talk about this last week. I got a poster for The Running Man before my showing.
That's kind of cool.
I literally the first time I've ever gotten anything from AMC, like a poster or anything like that. But in my closet right now, waiting to be hung, I have a pretty decent, it's actually an exclusive poster. Like, it's not a poster that they've used anywhere. It's only
IMAX exclusive.
I believe so. I think it's IMAX exclusive.
That makes sense.
But I didn't see. Did you see this movie in 3D? Wicked for Good.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they had it in 3D, and I did not. It didn't. I'll be honest, it didn't hinder my experience by any means. I'm okay with 3D. It's just not something I prefer. It's also something that okay. Story time with Carson. When Avatar: Way of Water came out, I was doing a show at the time, and me and a bunch of friends were like, "Well, we want to see it opening day. Can you just come after your show?" I say, if we do this after my show, based on where we were heading, we would have to see the movie at like 12:30 at night. And lo and behold, there was a showing at 12:45 at night, at which point we all sat down, we put on our glasses, and we went, this was a horrible idea. What are we doing here? And we watched Avatar: Way of Water in 3D till 4:30 in the morning. I then had to drive home, get up at 8 o'clock, and do another show the next day. But the reason I say that story and why I hate 3D so much is I looked at my friend. I said, hey, what time is it? I go, I don't know. We'll check whenever you think the movie's over. He taps me on his shoulder and he goes, hey, check what time it is. I think the movie's almost over. Fuck. It's been 30 minutes. It's only been 30 minutes of the movie. And we were just in a living hell. I've since watched Avatar: Way of the Water, and I've had a whole different experience with that movie ever since. But I hated that movie walking out of it the first time, not because of the movie, but because I didn't want to be there. I was so over it.
Yeah,
Uh,
unfortunately, I wanted to see this movie in IMAX, but unfortunately, the only showing that they had for the pre-screening that I was available for, in fact, they actually didn't have any pre-screening IMAX showings, weirdly enough. They
yeah,
only had standard for like one showtime, two 3D showings, and then two AMC XL showings, which is essentially an IMAX. Well, smaller than IMAX size screen, but not that much smaller, but doesn't have the full IMAX experience in terms of like, because IMAX isn't just the screen size, it's the audio experience, it's the full thing. And
sure,
this is just a like standard theater with a bigger screen, but not as
sure.
big as IMAX. So that's how I saw this.
I also just realized because I just now looked at my camera. This is behind the scenes stuff. I'm currently in the process of moving boxes of stuff out of my room, and I cleared off my shelving units. And in the corner, I just went, "Oh, that's my Mission Impossible popcorn bucket and my Captain Morgan spiced rum bottle just sitting at the top." I went, "Oh,
Nice.
okay, great." Anyway, uh, back to you.
Yeah, no. So yeah, we walking through all that stuff. So Carson, obviously, I know you are very anticipated of my thoughts because I'm actually really proud of myself. You know, I don't even like. Do you even have an inkling if I enjoyed either of these movies? Like, you know nothing.
Nothing. I know nothing.
So I know you because of that want me to start first, but unfortunately the way that this podcast works is we swap off back and forth. So that means that Carson, you have to give your Wicked review first.
Okay, so here's what I'm gonna say. And this is just for the first movie because we're splitting this up with first movie, second movie. The first movie, walking out of the first movie a year ago, it had been forever since I'd seen Wicked. I liked the musical. I thought it was okay. I saw it in 2019 when I went to New York and saw it on Broadway. I enjoyed it. Thought it was good. Um, I wasn't like super hyped for this film. I thought it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be pretty good. I liked it. Uh, Walking out of this theater, I stood there and went, "This is one of the best musical to movie adaptations I've ever seen." And I think the first one specifically is going to stand the test of time. Like 10 years down the line, I might be able to answer this clearly and definitively. Like, oh yeah, it is definitely one of the best of all time because it is still so new. I might be rash when I say that. I don't think I am. I think it's just comes down to acting, music, set design, sound design, all of it. It is truly encapsulating what Oz is like. And for somebody who grew up watching The Wizard of Oz just as a kid, loving that movie, watching it multiple times, so much so that when they did like I think it was like the 70th, 60th, I don't remember which anniversary it was. Definitely wasn't the 60th. I just realized that I would have been not born yet. But it was one of the anniversaries for the film. My mom, grandma, my brothers, we all went and watched this midnight showing of The Wizard of Oz, at which point I fell asleep because it was midnight and I was a young boy. But I loved that musical so much. I performed in that musical because of how much I wanted to be in it. You know, that movie and musical just means so much to me. Going into Wicked and seeing all of it being brought to life, but being told the story from a different perspective and having just a completely different story entirely, but one of friendship and just acceptance. It's just one of the most beautiful stories I've ever seen it told. And I this is what I will say: Cynthia Erivo, Ariana Grande, whether you love them or hate them, and I know that they both have their haters from different perspectives. Whether you love them or hate them, give two of the best performances of just not just last year, but in any movie musical adaptation I think I've ever seen. They are both so raw with emotion here, and they're both so good, and they both encapsulate these characters so well. It literally taking them from page to Broadway to screen and giving not only the fans but just general moviegoers and audiences performances to fall in love with. Jonathan Bailey as Fiyero, Ethan Slater as Bach. Not one character in this first movie goes unnoticed. They all have so much fun together as a cast, and that whole dancing through life sequence. Like, I love Fiyero a lot. I love him as a character. That whole dancing through life sequence is just so much fun. Um, and Nessa Rose and Bach, seeing their relationship flourish. Obviously, it plays into the second movie. We'll get there, but seeing that whole arc, I love every second of that. And then you get to the big, final sequence where you actually meet the wizard and you get to see Jeff Goldblum doing his Jeff Goldblumisms, because of course, why not? Michelle Yeoh as Madame Morrible is great here. I know I already touched over the music, but just the way they use specific sound cues that are actually from the show and they link it in the movie is done beautifully here. I mean, there's just so much they did right. And I think the other way to say this is they handled it with so much care and love. And you could tell that the people who put this together were people who actually cared about the project they were trying to make. Um, and even if the CGI is distracting at times, which I don't really think it's actually overly distracting in this first movie at times, I think they actually have a really good blend of practical sets and CGI, blending it all together. Um, it creates such a fun and exciting time. And what I will say is different from this movie, because obviously this is act one of the show. They do a good job of giving everybody a character arc of sorts for just this first movie, so that it doesn't feel like that. And that's also why I think this film just works so well on its own and just does such a good job of bringing this story to life. The extended scenes that they add from the show are very, very good. I'm not going to say much more about it. I know I've talked about it before in this podcast. I think it was one of the best films of last year. Maybe, depending on who you talk to, is the best film of last year. And I think if you're a musical fan, you're going to love it. I think if you're a general moviegoer, you're going to have a lot of fun with it. Maybe not love it, but have a good time with it. Um, and I don't know, that's the first Wicked. Those are my thoughts.
Fair enough. And we'll go, even though we're reviewing both of these movies, we will do a short back and forth. And then I think we'll go into our thoughts on the second movie and go
Sure.
probably a lot more in depth on just general wickedness.
Sure.
Just because.
General wickedness. How many puns do you have in the
Exactly.
chamber? Oh my god.
Oh, too many to count. But, well, we can count. No, I don't know where I was going with that segue. So yeah, it's time to reveal to Carson and the audience whether or not I enjoyed, loved, hated Wicked.
Do I need to
I'm
get a
gonna
shot of
also
bourbon for this? Or
I'm gonna ask you, because I have a stream of thoughts. I know typically we stay silent for each other's like reviews anyway, but like
fine.
don't react.
Don't
Because
react.
I don't react. Well, you can react like verbal, like visually, but don't say anything, because I have a stream of thoughts that's going to carry me through, and you're going to want to say things about that stream of thoughts.
I'll tell you what.
But
I'm gonna look at my phone for a minute. Go ahead.
the first Wicked movie is incredible. It is a incredible movie. Like, genuinely, I was in awe. I was very afraid going into this first movie because it's 2 hours and 45 minutes. And I'm a sucker for a long movie. I love long movies, but you have to grip me. You have to give me a reason to care about 2 hours and 45 minutes, especially when I have not seen the original musical. In fact, other than a lot of the songs, did kind of go in a little bit unspoiled for certain things, so I could still enjoy this as a first-time watcher. And so, knowing that the original musical itself is basically the entire first and second act is the length of the first movie, I was afraid of if things were going to feel too dragged out. Not at all. Like, this movie flows so well. It is genuinely just such a fun time. Cynthia and Ariana give unbelievably amazing performances from an acting perspective and especially from a music perspective. I mean, Defying Gravity is one of the best songs ever sung on a Broadway stage. I just point blank, period, ever. Defying Gravity is one of the best songs ever sung in any musical whatsoever. And Cynthia kills it flawlessly. It is a difficult song and she knocks it out of the park. One of the things that I was genuinely impressed by with this movie is I had heard that the set pieces and the like general ambiance of this movie was really good. But one thing I didn't expect is I grew up in the theater, but I was a tech kid. All three of my sisters did theater. I am very familiar with set building and theater from a behind the scenes perspective. And the way that they make a lot of these sets feel like like a Broadway set while still making it feel professional like a movie set actually impressed me because it feels like a movie, but it also feels like you're watching what would the equivalent be of a Broadway musical. I know that might sound confusing if you don't know Broadway musicals or the behind the scenes of musicals as well, but like for someone who knows a lot of that behind the scenes information, I was impressed. Now, when you get into the big CGI moments like with the castle, I think it's good. I wouldn't say it's like blew me away. Like we're not talking Avatar Way of Water here, but it doesn't need to be. Again, you're talking about something that was probably a plank of plywood versus like in turning it into a giant CGI castle. Like, yeah, you did an amazing job. I think that in this is going to be controversial. I think Glinda is phenomenal villain. I think in this first movie, she is clearly one of the main villains. I mean, racism is the villain. Racism is the villain of Wicked. But I think Glinda is the villain of the first movie. And I'll talk about my thoughts on what her role is in the second movie. But it recontextualizes everything you know about her character from The Wizard of Oz in a way that just makes me appreciate the first movie or the Wizard of Oz so much more in the depth behind these characters that you just don't get in that original story. From talking about solely from the movie, I know the book is a little bit different, but I was genuinely like floored by how much I loved this movie. And I have so much to say back and forth, but the last thing I'll say with my review is there's a reason Jonathan Bailey won World's Sexiest Man Alive, because that man in this movie, first of all, I didn't know he could sing, but is he the best singer in this movie? No. Obviously, you have Ariana Grande, an accomplished like singer, but like Jonathan Bailey actually impressed me from someone who didn't even know he could sing, and I'm assuming he is actually the one who sang, and it's not a Zac Efron in the High School Musical movies, but like everyone brings their A game in this movie in a way that just everything feels consistently incredible. Like there's not one thing in the first movie that I can really point at and go, "Oh, that brings it down or that makes it bad." Like no, I think that everyone is on that same level whether they're in the movie a little bit or a lot. It just flows so well and it really blew me away. Like that it is an incredible movie. Are you happy
Yeah.
now? Are you happy? So
Well,
now to get into my actual review, now that I'm done lying to Carson, I can say how
yeah.
shit the movie was. No,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
No, I look, I at the end of the day, for me, when it came to the first one, at the very least, 'cause I didn't know how the second one was gonna go. Obviously, I didn't know how I was gonna feel about the second one. I just wanted you to have a fun time with it, and I'm glad that you actually got more out of it than that. Because I like again, I'll say it again. I do truly believe this is probably one of the best musical to movie adaptations. Period. The
yeah.
original Wicked movie is really good. Um, okay, of all the songs in the original movie, I do have my answer, and people are probably gonna hate me for it. But what
I
is your
mean,
favorite song?
I already said it in my review, and it is the most cop out bullshit obvious answer in the world. But like, "Defying Gravity" is a song that I legitimately listen to in my free time, and I cry every time I listen to it. Like, it is such an emotional song for me, and I know it is for everyone. But like, if Defying Gravity, it's one of those songs for me that if Defying Gravity comes on, I'm listening to it. Like, there's no skip. It's
Sure,
a never skip song. Like, I am listening to Defying
sure.
Gravity, and so that is just like, again, it is the cop out easy answer. Everyone says Defying Gravity, but like this is a song that well before I knew what the story of this movie was, well before I knew any of the emotional significance of the
Sure.
song in the movie, just
Right.
had such a resonance with me and the
Right.
way that the song just made me feel.
Right. Um, what was your least favorite song? I do have an answer for this, and I I could say
I
what
don't.
mine is, and you could probably
Okay, yeah. Go ahead and say yours because there was, like I said, like I don't feel like there was anything that I can really point at that was like, oh, that's not good. Maybe there were songs that like. i-
it's
um,
not.
the- my answer is probably a song that I don't remember because even if it wasn't like bad, it was just one of the lesser of the really good songs.
Let me say that I don't think any of the songs in the first movie are utterly bad, and I know that there are a lot of people who are going to love almost all of the songs in that first movie, and even the second one too. I think that there are just some that are just so slow that it's kind of repetitive to the point where it's just like, oh, I don't really this doesn't need to exist. I also don't think there are some songs that need to exist. I think the first example is Something Bad, which is sung by Peter Dinklage as Dr. Dillamond, because for whatever reason, they chose the best casting for a goat with Peter Dinklage, the goat. Uh, and it's I'm Not That Girl. It's the one whenever after Fiyero and Elphaba have given
Yeah.
the lion, they released him, and she's singing about uh well, she's singing pretty much while Fiyero was doing his thing, she's singing and whatnot. That song to me,
Hmm.
it's not bad, and I will listen to it if like it's on in the car, I guess. It's just not one that I'm gonna constantly go back to like the other songs in the show. I think it's just so slow. And unlike something like The Wizard and I and Defying Gravity, you just don't feel really much emotional weight behind it, in my opinion. Like I get what they're trying to go for with it, and I get it, but you also like this is just the hard part because it's a movie, not a musical. The song wasn't really needed. You saw it in the scene prior and a little bit after what she was feeling. You didn't need the song to explain it. So it just kind of felt unnecessary at certain times. Uh
I think that's fair.
so
Yeah.
I
Again, like I don't have like a lot to say because like I remember the song and again, I did not think it was bad when I listened to it, but like again, when my answer to the question of like what my least favorite song is none of them, but if you ask me are there songs that I don't remember as much just because they
sure.
weren't like they're not they were really good when I listened to them in the moment, but I wouldn't call them like memorable blow me away like a Defying
Sure.
Gravity or like some of the other songs. I think that like yeah, that's a fair answer because when you say it, I can remember the song and I know what's happening in the moment, but 20 minutes from now or tomorrow when I'm working, it's not going to be a song that I'm just like thinking about.
Uh, there are some things I can't talk about till we like get to the second movie, so I'll save part of it, or I'll save part of this question.
Mhm.
Uh, but because you knew nothing about any of this musical, you didn't know any of the twists, you didn't know any of the character. What did? I guess we have to save part of that till we get to the second movie.
So
But
I knew that racism played a role.
I
I that
right,
I knew. I mean, pretty much everything that I knew other than the songs, like, this is how little I knew. I did not know what the prince's role in this movie was at all. I had
okay,
no idea what his role in the movie was.
okay,
I knew what I knew of this movie other than the songs really was just what I knew from the original Wizard of Oz, and that is that the Wizard of Oz is evil. That's something that's set up. I
right.
didn't know going into the movie that I'm blanking on her character's name, but what's the Wizard of Oz's better half?
Oh, Madame Horrible.
Yes, Madame Warble. I didn't know what her role in the movie was gonna be. Now, I didn't know going in, but I was able to kind of predict it throughout the course of the movie, but that wasn't like I knew this going in. It was just I could see the ducks lining up in a row for what that reveal was
Sure,
going to be.
sure. Uh, yeah, the interesting with the wizard twist, because we can talk about that because that's the first movie. With the wizard twist, it's kind of hard not to see that coming, even if you're just watching this like completely unknown, because the movie's called Wicked, but from the beginning of the movie, it's set up. You know, Elphaba's a good person. You know, Glinda, as much as she's a bully, they develop a friendship, and they're both friends throughout the course of the movie. Who's the villain? What's the conflict? You know, there has to be something. The only thing you can think of is the fact that you already know the wizard doesn't have real power. He is just a guy. That's got to be the answer. And so that I will say is kind of the unfortunate thing is if you just use your brain a little bit too much, you can put those pieces together from the original Wizard of Oz and just immediately plunk it out.
Yeah.
Um, did
Well, I have a question for you since you asked
Yeah.
me some questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I don't think did you answer what your favorite song was? You said what your least favorite was. Did you say what your favorite was?
Yeah, and I feel like I'm gonna get a lot of flack for it just
Just say
because
it.
look, I love The Wizard and I. I think that it is just such a beautifully put together song. I think it really does bring together Elphaba as a character and flesh her out so well. I love Defying Gravity. There's just always been something about the way the lyrics are written for The Wizard and I that I love. I also say I love Dancing Through Life just as a ballad. It's so much fun. In the original Broadway version and here, it's just such a blast and such a fun song from start to finish. You can't help but sing along to it. I'm listing off the whole soundtrack here, but Popular is another one where it's like it's just so much fun. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
trying not to like all of the like the really good songs of this show are like in act one, and it just hits so hard. Every single one of the songs pop up in the first movie. It's so good.
Yeah. So my question for you, since you answered your own question now, what is your favorite moment from the first Wicked movie? Like, if you had to point to a scene, a moment, like, what is the moment?
Let me specify this a bit more because that's such a broad question. Are you talking about
I
like an
mean, yeah.
emotional moment, or are you talking about like
I
a
just mean,
comedic
like,
moment?
when you think to this movie, it's whatever your version of best is, whether it's the most emotionally impactful, whether if you had to describe to someone what makes this movie so amazing in one scene, not like a
It
collection of moments, but one scene.
The dance between Glinda and Elphaba in the ballroom sequence. That
You
is the best.
stole my answer. That
That
is
is that is the best sequence in this whole movie because it shows so much
correct.
emotion without having to talk or anything. It's just music, dancing. But here's what I will say. You can't get to that moment if you don't have the rest of the the earlier part of the movie. And so
Yeah.
it like I yes, it's the best scene, but only if you've seen the entire thing start to finish.
Well, yeah, but
That
I'm not saying that, like,
no,
someone's
no,
gonna
no, no, no,
just
no, no.
watch this scene, but, like,
It's just
I think that the correct answer is the ballroom scene. That
It's
is
just shot so well, and the emotion is so raw, and it's just such a beautiful moment. I mean, I rewatched it for the 4th time, I think, like, 2 months ago when I had family in town, they hadn't seen it, and I started crying again at the sequence, and I don't usually cry in films multiple times, not let alone a year after it released, you know what I mean?
yeah,
It's just such an engagingly beautiful moment, and it's a tender moment, and it really encapsulates the 2 characters so well. Um, and I guess if we're being that whole sequence just encapsulates every single character so well.
yep,
Fiyero just being in his own head, like the song says, dancing through life. Glinda and Elphaba being able to find acceptance. Bach and Nessa Rose. I mean, it's so well done, all of it.
yeah. No, I agree, and I think that like you said, it just sets up all the characters and gives every single one of them, like, our core characters a moment.
Yeah,
Like, even
yeah,
like you said, Bach and Nesso, like, they get a moment in that scene. You have the moment with the prince, you have the moment between Elf, like, I think that that moment also encapsulates why I think that Glinda is the villain, because here's the thing, it isn't that she's a villain in a sense of like overtly evil. Obviously,
right.
she's not overtly evil. However, she is negligent to a point of dangerous, is what
Yes,
she is.
yes,
Glinda is negligent and in her head to a point of being so dangerous that most of the events that happen past, I mean, basically them meeting in all of the negatives is Glinda's fault.
it
It,
is.
it really is. And
Yeah,
it's, again, the reason I view her as the villain isn't because she's the one purposefully orchestrating it. No, that's the wizard, but she is very negligent and therefore leading to a lot of these events that she could have easily prevented. And in that negligence, there is also a bit mixed in there of selfishness, where she
yeah,
is kind of being knowingly evil. Where after that point, when they meet the Wizard of Oz, she is siding with the wizard because it gets her what she wants. It doesn't matter what's
right.
good. Glinda's never cared about what's good. And that's the reason why her and the prince were never going to work. And that's why, like, their relationship is so interesting between Elphaba and the prince, because, like, they don't have, like, all that much screen time together up until the point of that dance moment. However, I think they really do set it up well in their first interaction,
Yeah.
where you can tell through the subtleness in his actions that he doesn't care. Like, why does it matter that she's green? Like, he's coming from an away town. He doesn't know any of the ways of Oz. So her being green doesn't matter to him. Talking animals don't matter to him. Like, why would he
Right.
care? Why would he view that as a negative thing? Because this is just how it is.
Right. Yeah. It I mean, the relationship specifically between Elphaba and Glinda is just shown so well, and like you said, even though she's not the main villain, obviously the main villain of the first film is Madame Morrible and
Racism.
the Wizard, and more realistically, if I'm being completely honest, I would say the bigger villain is Madame Morrible. She is a antagonist, of
Oh,
course, in the first movie. I would say more so than the Wizard. The Wizard is a villain,
absolutely.
but he's also like he's just a guy,
The
know?
well, and here's the thing: the Wizard and Glinda have a lot in common. Like,
Yeah,
their actions and their headspace are almost identical in a way that feels very purposeful. Because Glinda, again, very, very negligible, but when she's not negligible, she's looking out for her own self interest. She's willing to look down on others. She's willing to be racist. She's willing to be anti animal and not stick her neck
yeah,
out because she knows it won't get her what she wants. And that's
right,
ultimately all that matters to her, is through all the feigned kindness or even genuine kindness, what to her core is her. That's what
yeah,
matters for the 99.9% of this movie. And we'll talk about what that last 0.1% is when we get to the second movie. But it's very similar with Oz in his character, because he is powerless, but he's a con man. And so he uses his own he it is made out to be that he uses his own skills, but a lot of it is Madame Warble. Like, Madame Warble is the puppet master of Oz. Like, Oz got to that point without Madame Warble, but she's the one who elevated him beyond that. I think that's made very clear. And she's
right,
the one that keeps him up there because she's the one that has power.
right. Yeah, I think that there's just there is a you almost in a certain way, and this is a horrible way of putting this, so internet don't kill me. You almost feel bad for the Wizard in a certain extent because he isn't like objectively doing this because he thinks he's evil or because he's straight up evil. He's doing it because he believes it's right. And it's also not like a, oh, you can't convince him otherwise type thing. Again, we'll get to movie two. It's more along the line of he doesn't know what he's doing. He landed like, and this is more from the perspective of if you just know the lore of the Wizard himself. He landed in Oz on a whim. He was a carnival magician or a con man,
Yeah.
whichever objective you want to look at him. It's basically the same thing. Who just landed there and people looked up to him as a godlike figure, a wizard. He doesn't know what he's doing, but he lives so long into a lie, and he doesn't want to escape it because now he's lived in this world for too long that that's what bites him in the ass at the end of this movie when he's like, "Hey, I don't actually have real power. I need you for this alphabet. Can you help me do this, please? Even though I've been doing all the wrong things here." Um, and it's just such it's such an interesting concept to look at it because again, you can't feel bad's not the right word for it, but I don't know what word to use for it. You just he's not objectively like when Jeff Goldblum says, and this is looking at the second movie, but I'm pulling it for the first movie because it does make sense here. I'm not a bad guy. Objectively, that's true. He's not a bad man. Like he just thinks he's doing what's right objectively.
Well, and
Even though
that's where the
obviously
Madame Warble
right.
manipulation comes in. Yeah.
And obviously obviously he's not really doing the right thing, but it's like what Glinda's like the person who's breaking the chain. Hey, the Wizard lives this life for so long, and I'm starting down the same path. I'm gonna break it. I don't know. It's kind of like the same
I mean,
thing.
it's very telling that Glinda ends up, again, spoiling the second movie, but it's very ironic that Glinda ends up being in the same position as the wizard, also built off of lies in the
Uh,
backs of others.
it's hard to talk about the first movie after you've seen the second. Like, this is why I was also like, oh my god, we should have recorded this prior, because there's so much you can't say after seeing the second movie, because now you have the complete puzzle. It's like hard to answer like certain things
I mean,
about it.
we're like 40 minutes into talking about the first movie. Do you want to move on to the second movie and we can talk about it as a whole?
And we can just talk about it as a whole.
Okay. So you give your 3, 5, whatever minutes, like initial
Oh
thoughts for
god.
the movie.
Oh
Do you want me to
god.
go first?
No, I'll go
I know I
first.
okay. I was gonna say I'll give you that out if you want to, because I know you're
No, I'll go first, and this is where I'm at with this. Look, it's a well-known tradition with musicals that Act Two is usually never as good as Act One. So when they announced that this movie was two parts, Act One, Act Two, I knew the second movie was not going to be as good as the first movie, and I was right about that. Is this a bad movie? No, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's very clear that this is a Act Two to Act One, a Part One and Part Two, but it also doesn't feel like your traditional part one, part two, like in the sense of like movie terms. You look at movies like Back to the Future and Back to the Future Part Two, those are objectively two separate films. Back to the Future one's a complete story, and then the second one is a completely different story, but it still follows the logic of the first movie. But it's technically a part two and part one. Wicked is Wicked for Good is a film that it's literally act 2. It picks up immediately where the thing left off, and it doesn't stop to answer any questions. It just trucks through it. And, sometimes because they are extending the runtime, there are a couple pacing issues every now and again. They're not like absurdly abhorrent, but you can feel it in the runtime as they're trying to stretch out what is typically an hour, maybe 45-minute act 2 to being a 2.5 hour movie almost. And you can feel that at certain points. I think the two songs that they added for Glinda and Elphaba that are just completely new, they're not from the original musical, that being, The Girl in the Bubble and Stand By, Girl in the Bubble and No Place Like Home. They were very beautifully written songs. They were very well done. Uh, but here's what I'm getting at. They are also songs that, yes, they made sense in the story and they did push character development. I don't think they really added anything all that much to the other than Glinda's song. Elphaba's song didn't really add anything for me where it was like, oh, this is clearly pushing the story along. It's not just filler. It felt like filler to me. Beautiful filler, but it felt like filler. Um, And, I talked about in the first movie about how, like, everybody felt like they had a complete arc at the end of the first movie. Like, they did a pretty good job of justifying, like, okay, this is Glinda's arc, this is Elphaba's arc. Even though it's not the overarching main objective arc, everybody had some sort of arc that brought their character to a logical close for the first movie in some regard. Wicked for Good continues the arc from the first movie, but it's weird because they already had a completed arc in the first movie, but it's so weird. Like I can't even like describe it or put into words how to feeling. You just kind of have to watch it and to understand what I'm feeling. Maybe you can explain it better than I can. Uh, Again, the twists in the second movie are really good, and especially if you go back and watch the first movie, you can see the subtle nods that are leading towards it. Like obviously in Dancing Through Life, Fierro sings Life is Painless for the Brainless, which is a subtle nod to the Scarecrow, obviously in Wizard of Oz. In the song If I Only Had a Brain, Brainless, If I Only Had a Brain. There's a line in that song that he says, I could dance and be merry. It's just bringing parallels to that character. It's subtle things like that you can pick up on. The fact that the lion they rescue from the cage ends up being the cowardly lion is a fun thing. I could go on for hours about references that I've noticed from the first movie and the second movie, but this is whereas the first movie in my mind is a solid 9 out of 10 to honest to God, And I know I don't like ranking things, but even honest to God, maybe a 10 out of 10. Like there's a very logical argument for that to be made. This one feels like a very solid 7, 7.5 out of 10. It's not bad. It's just slower, and it clearly feels like the act 2 of a musical that is extended. And it's harder to do that, unlike act 1, where you can extend it as much as you want and have it make sense logically.
Okay, that's fair. And we'll get into our back and forth on things, but in terms of my thoughts, Wicked for Good is an incredible movie, is what I was ready to say for the first 75% of it. And then the last 25% of this movie exists. And I'm going to be totally honest. I think ruin is a strong word, but I'm very tempted to use the word ruin for the rest of this movie because I know that this is the part 2 to another movie, and I know that the musical is the length of the first movie and that this is a significantly extended portion, and I know that the events of Wizard of Oz take place smack dab in that last 25% of the movie. The pacing issues in that last 25% and the fact that nothing feels good. Like I didn't feel like I wanted to feel an emotional payoff for things. I wanted to feel invested, but everything just started. It was after Elphaba turns the prince into the scarecrow. That moment was incredible. I love that song. It's my favorite song in the entire movie. It is an incredible moment. It's an incredibly emotional moment. Everything to do with that scene is incredible. Everything before that I thought was very, very good. Everything after that moment just falls off a cliff so hard and so fast of trying to pull everything together, wrap it up. There's zero time to process anything that's happening or appreciate the twists or the references. I think all the characters just kind of end. Like there's no like, oh my God, this is incredible. Like this is amazing. It all just kind of ends. And again, I know that a lot of these moments are happening in Wizard of Oz, but like looking at this from a movie perspective and a story perspective, it's bad. Like I'm sorry, it just the last 25% of this movie really just ruins it for me because I don't feel like there's a payoff for the animals because we also like the animals for existence that doesn't get anything in Wizard of Oz. Like the animals, the talking animals are like not a plot line in Wizard of Oz. There's such a core plot line to this movie, and I feel like you see them leaving and then they come back. Like there's nothing in this movie for them to do. There's no reason for them to come back. Why do they come back? There is the Wizard of Oz, like the Oz thing and him leaving, like all of that just felt such a nothing to me. Like I knew, and this isn't something that's spoiled, but like just the direction that this movie was going to go, I knew Elphaba was going to live, and I knew she was going to go off happy with the Scarecrow because they weren't going to end this movie sad. I didn't feel anything. I wanted to feel emotional at that moment. I wanted to feel like, oh my God, they're going off happy together. And oh my God, Glinda has to leave and pick the pieces back together and all of these things. But I felt nothing because I just felt like that rush to get to that moment just left me empty. It really did. And I'm just so disappointed, is the easiest word to use. Because again, the first 75% of this movie, the vast majority of this movie, it holds the same quality. It holds as the first movie. The sets look amazing, even though there's way more CGI in this movie than the first one, because most of this takes place in the Emerald City. But the singing is still incredible. The acting is still incredible. All of those moments are still incredible in the first 75% of this movie. And arguably, all of that stuff is also still incredible in the last 25% of this movie. But that just goes to show how horrible the pacing of this ruins the movie, is that
Yeah.
all of that stuff can be top tier. I would willingly call it incredible, that it takes this movie down so low for me that I've only seen it once and I'm coming fresh off of this. I never want to see this movie again, and I would watch the first movie a million times. But this movie, like I just can't. I genuinely can't, and I don't know what would have fixed it. And I know that people who have seen the Broadway musical are going to say this because I texted my family who saw this on Broadway. I don't know if it was the original cast or not, but like my family saw this on Broadway and they pointed out of like, you think this is rushed, like the musical is way more rushed. Then I probably wouldn't enjoy the musical, to be honest, because I love when the moments have time to breathe and I love having time to sit with these characters and get attached to things. That's why I love long stories and long movies, because I
Yeah.
want to get as invested as possible. And the first movie does that so incredibly well that when the second movie isn't able to pay off the incredible buildup that they've given all these characters, I feel so utterly disappointed that I feel like all of the buildup and all of the investment that I had in the first movie and then 75% of this movie felt like an utter waste because of how they just butchered the ending. And I know I'm repeating myself here, so I'll just kind of end this, but like I walked out so incredibly disappointed that I don't know. Like I loved so much of this movie and then just hated it. Admittedly, like
I okay.
that's my
So here's what I
thoughts.
do think that's a strong term there because here's what I think. I don't hate this movie by any means, even with that ending, and I had the same problem you did. Here's my look at it. They extended the wrong things. They added the songs for Glinda and for Elphaba. The Elphaba one I really don't think was necessary. The Glinda one wasn't necessary, but it added character. But almost to a point where it's like, why add that character moment? Because honestly, everything up to the Broadway musical is fast, and you have to understand. Again, it's not about the Wizard of Oz story. That's why they don't show Dorothy's face at all the entire film, is because it's not her
Yes.
story. She's just in it. I'm not mad at any of the choices that this film makes, or that the musical makes, or that the book writes. I'm not mad at any of those choices. I think if you're going to adapt it and you're going to extend things, and you've already extended this film from, again, the hour 15 runtime minute or however long Act Two is to 2 hours and something minutes, why not extend the ending so it doesn't feel as rushed? You can still have it be quicker because I get the whole idea of it is it's not the point. You're just watching this. Why not extend the ending so that you get a bit more time to breathe with certain scenes? Again, I did cry during For Good. For Good is one of the most beautiful female ballads or duets in the history of Broadway. It is incredible. And that moment, I will say, is very well done, enough that it got me emotional and cried. No Good Deed is, you said, was your favorite song. It's also probably my favorite song in this whole thing too. I love No Good Deed. And all the twists are so good. The March of the Witch Hunter song, when it's Bach basically is bringing up the revolution within Oz and everybody's got like pitchforks and stuff. I'm like, nope, that's fire. That's good. Good song. The issue is all of it pretty much from the moment that Fiyero gets himself, what is on screen supposed to be killed, it's all a moment that just becomes rushed and one not a mess, not blob. And I don't like the word ruin. It didn't ruin anything for me, but I saw the wasted potential with it.
I
I'm
think
fine. I'm fine with what they gave me enough to where I would rewatch again if I'm rewatching both. But I see the potential of what there could have been and can't feel frustrated by that.
Yeah, I think you put it way better than I could have, and I wish I would have said this in my original, but the reason why I think that this ending ruins the movie for me is because you're totally right, and I could not agree with you more. They set the precedence that they were going to extend this out. And again, the first movie is the runtime of the entire musical. And then you got an additional 2 hour and 14-minute movie on top of that. You have what is equivalent to almost or over 5 hours worth of movie, or just about 5 hours worth of movie. You've already set the precedence that you're going to give us more time with things. And to me, in the moments that mattered for the payoff of everything you've been building to and the precedence that you've been set, you fumbled so hard. You set up the precedent. And again, Yes, the musical is rushed, even though I haven't seen it. And yes, I know it's probably the same in the books, but the movie set a completely different precedence than those. They've made it clear that they are going to extend this out, but then when it mattered to extend it out, again, we don't need small additional songs if you could use that 15-minute equivalent to give me 15 more minutes to make all of these other actually impactful character moments have a chance to breathe.
Right.
So when you're revealing that, oh, this character is the Tin Man and this character is the Scarecrow and this character, it all just kind of happens so fast that I'm
Sure.
like, all of these moments I feel like I wish I would have breathed with, and I wish I would have
Yeah.
like actually been like, oh my God, that's an insane reveal. But nope, we're on to the next thing. And we're off to see Glinda again, or we're off to see Elphaba again. And it's like, no, go back to that. Like, I want to see that and what happens with that. But you don't. And the only other counter argument is like, oh, well, you get all of their character moments in Wizard of Oz. But you're talking about this movie and the story that they're trying to tell with this movie as a movie, it doesn't work. In
And again,
saying you need to watch another movie to make the middle part of this movie work, to me, as a movie enjoyer, is a bad precedence to set.
well, and also let's look at the obvious here because I get that this is technically it's including the events of Wizard of Oz. It's telling a very different story. Like when you look at Wizard of Oz, Dorothy meets a scarecrow and meets a tin man and a cowardly lion. They all get the reasons, but it's a happier thing. There's no background thing to anything. The wizard isn't necessarily a bad guy. He just, is a wizard who landed there by accident. That's kind of the same thing in this movie to a
Well,
certain extent.
it's
It's very
different
different.
in the well, it's here's the thing. It's different in the original book. If I
Yes.
You're talking about the movie,
Yeah.
the book, the original Wizard of Oz book follows a lot more along the lines of that twisted background for all the
Yeah.
characters than the original movie does.
Right, but because they're both movies, that's what I'm basing this off of, even though I know it's
Yeah,
based
that's
off of a
fair.
book.
That's
In
fair.
this film, it gives us a very different interpretation of the Tin Man slash Bach than we had ever gotten before. He is hell bent on revenge. He doesn't have a heart. He wants to kill so he can get revenge for what was done to him. And you get that, but it's so rushed. Again, that's where I agree with you. Like, it's the first 75% is really well paced, and the last end of it, it's just moments that you were like, go back to that. I want to sit more in that. Like, I want to sit more in Bach's fury and rage. I want to sit more in the moment of him being absolutely hell bent on revenge because of what had been done to him. I want to sit more with the cowardly lion. We're given this idea of, oh, he's cowardly because uh he was freed from a cage that he believes was his home or whatever because he was taken from it and set free, even though that's not really the objective way of what happened. And also get that the idea of why they didn't show any of it was also part of Fiero's reveal. Was
Yeah.
because
Well, because
you
like
weren't technically supposed to know that he was the scarecrow.
I didn't. I had absolutely zero idea that he was the Scarecrow at all. And I will say, I didn't know the Cowardly Lion reveal. I didn't know the Tin Man. I knew none of that. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why I'm so disappointed that I was so shocked by these moments and then it felt wasted. The only reveal, and I did this to myself, is I knew the Wicked Witch of the East twist because yesterday, after watching the original movie, I Googled, am I supposed to know who the Wicked Witch of the East is? And it was like, oh, it's her sister. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't pick up on that. I wonder if I spoiled it for me. Yeah, turns
Well,
out
and
it was supposed to be a reveal. And
the
I get
yeah.
that the shoes give it away. The shoes in the first movie do give it away. Even though they're
I
not red, it follows the original silver of the story.
I only give you credit for that because you didn't watch Wizard of Oz like I did growing up. I'm sure you watched it once. Maybe you didn't. I don't even know. But you didn't know it like I did. So whenever she comes out with the shoes or that the sister of the Witch of the West is supposed to be the Witch of the East, you knew that was coming. You knew that was going to happen. I also saw the Broadway musical, so I knew that obviously that was going to happen. Uh, but even I could have put two and two together because I just known that the story of the Wizard of Oz so well that that was going to happen. I do get how you could have gotten yourself spoiled that and how you wouldn't have known that though. look again, like all the positives from the first movie are absolutely positives here. Performance is
Mhm.
outstanding, music is really good, and even though the tone is completely different here, like, and I get that because Act Two is a lot more depressing than Act One. Even though the tone's different, that's not the issue. It literally is the last 20%, not even that, maybe 10% of this movie that is just go, 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 even though it's a lot of plot all at once. Let's rush through it and let's get through it as quickly as we possibly can. It just feels like that. And it's unfortunate because again, another moment that you really wish you could sit in more is the reveal that the wizard, who this whole time has talked about how he's always wanted a son and a daughter, uh, that it's revealed that Elphaba was in fact his daughter this
Yeah,
entire
and
time.
I wanted to feel something at that moment, but I'm gonna be honest, I don't wanna say it felt like an afterthought because they clearly set up, but it literally feels like you get a moment in the first movie where you have the whole setup of her being a baby of an affair, and then you have a moment in the end where we reveal who the like, there was nothing in between that, that really made me connect with that to where I needed something. I
Yeah,
need a little something, and you called it out. The only, like, little something is him referencing that he wants a son and a daughter, and I guess you could call that the reference. But the fact that we go from like nothing to we see this bottle that how like it to me a random bottle, and I don't even put the two and two together until like all of that just kind of felt like a we need to add another big reveal and emotional through line that for me ultimately wasn't necessary. Like I
yeah,
don't think that I would have felt any different about the way that this movie ended, whether the wizard was her dad or not.
yeah. I will also say "Wonderful," which is the Wizards song in this movie, is the only upbeat song in this entire movie. It is the only one that you're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, this is great! It's so much fun." The rest of the time,
Well,
so depressing. I get that that's the point, but that's why that was like just a moment. I was like, "Oh, can we sit in this moment just a little bit longer? Everybody's so happy. Everybody's having a great time. Can we just do that, please? Just sit in it a little longer." No, it got ripped away immediately. I was really sad about that, even though I knew that was coming.
yeah. Well, and one thing that we talked about in the first movie, and I think is more apparent even in the second movie, is it's just a really well cast movie. Like, I was on the
Yeah.
fence about Jeff Goldblum at first, but I feel like Jeff Goldblum shines a lot, especially in the second movie, because ultimately he's not in the first movie all that much. He
No.
really isn't. So when he gets his moments to shine in the second movie, he plays them really well. Now, no offense to Jeff Goldblum, he's not. I feel like I wouldn't be saying this if he was put up against anyone else. But when you're in a movie with Ariana Grande and like when you're put up in a movie with them and you sing, his songs
He's
aren't the
he's he's a
strongest
character.
vocally. He's a
He's a
character singer.
he's a character singer. That's exactly what he is.
Yeah, and he does a good job at that. I just can't help but be like, you're doing a phenomenal job with acting, but your songs definitely feel more of a like you're talking your songs with reverb as opposed to like and the only reason I say that is because like Jonathan Bailey in his song when he's doing his duet with Glinda, like or not Glinda, sorry, with Elphaba, like it was genuinely impressive. Like he does a really good job in the first movie, but that song with Elphaba is like I was afraid going into this movie that there wasn't going to like I knew a lot of songs from this going in, but
Yeah.
after I finished the first movie, I was like, well, I've heard every song that I know, which typically means I've heard all of the good songs of that's typically what that means is because people only re-listen to and post everywhere the good songs. And so I was a little afraid going into the second movie that there was like I just wasn't going to connect with any of the songs. And while I will admit there are a lot more songs that again I wouldn't call bad, they're still good songs, but are a lot more forgettable than the songs in the
Yeah.
first movie. However, you do have the duet between the Prince and Elphaba, and you do have No Good Deed, which No Good Deed is it's an incredible song to me. I
It's a banger.
love that song.
It's a
And then there
banger.
was one other song, and forgive me, I don't know the names of the songs because I haven't seen it, but it's right at the beginning, and I believe it's
Thank
what
goodness.
no think is it's either thank good it's Glinda's song with the ensemble cast when
Thank
they're
goodness.
set. Yes, that song. Yes,
Thank
that's a
goodness.
really good song as well. That's a really catchy, good song.
I like that. That's a good one. Uh, I look, the wizard again, it's rushed. The wizard's end makes perfect sense. He does the right thing for once in his life, which is he steps down and he leaves. He doesn't tell anybody the truth, mind you, because they're just living in the lie, which is the unfortunate end of the movie. Glinda's, like you said, forced to pick up the pieces of the puzzle, but he does the right thing for once in his life. After, like, he doesn't continue down the lie, he just leaves. He realizes he's the problem, gets out, goodbye. And he, completes his arc by leaving. Uh, Madame Morrible in the movie just meets a very weird end because whenever she gets taken away by the monkeys to be put in a cage forever, my first thought is, bitch, you're magical. You think a couple of monkeys are gonna stop you?
Yep.
I'm like, call lightning from the storm or something from any storm. Do anything with the weather. I promise you, this is not the end of the world for you. Uh,
You literally just caused a tornado that killed someone's like you did all of this and then two monkeys just like that's my other thing. It's like it's just because it's rushed, but like especially with Warble, she was really good in the first movie and the way that she manipulated everything the entire time, and the reveal of her being evil, while be it kind of predictable, was still really good.
right.
And her relationship with the wizard, and she does a lot of that in the first I'd say 50% of this movie. And then after the tornado scene, she's kind of just useless
She's
and
just
none of her
there.
character makes sense
She's
at
just kind of
all.
there.
Like she could do
Yeah.
so much more to prevent what's happening. Like for instance, she just proved that she can cause a tornado that ripped a house out of the ground.
Yeah.
She could have stopped Elphaba easily by herself, and she is only to blame for her own, like she's only to blame for this because she proved that she is strong enough that she could have done something. And then they send this random girl from Kansas, a scared shitless lion, a tin man, and a scarecrow, who's also, mind you, the person who's in love with Elphaba, to
Yeah.
go get the broom. Like that, none of that makes sense. Like I'm not saying that she needs to be the one to go get it. Like obviously that would make no sense for the Wizard of Oz, but it's the fact that they don't give any viable explanation. Like the movie needs to explain to me why she's not doing all of these things if you're
Yeah.
going to set all of this up, and it doesn't. It just goes, she doesn't do it because it doesn't, because we forgot she could do it. Like I don't know.
Yeah,
And I
no,
think that's the same thing with a lot of the characters. Because like the other thing I will say is I love the reveal that and I keep saying the prince. I need to remember what's his actual name.
Fiero.
Fiero. Fiero is the scarecrow. Huge reveal for me. Very emotionally impactful moment. His journey that recontextualizes his journey on the Wizard of Oz so much that actually it makes no sense. Like he is in love with Elphaba, and here's the thing: it's not like he forgets about Elphaba's existence. No, 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 no. Because at the end of the movie, he goes and gets her. Like it makes no sense for his
Alphaba
reveal
gets
for me.
Alphaba gets a note from a monkey, and she tells Glinda that Fiero's dead. Fiero's not dead. That note did not say what she thought it was. Fiero basically told Elphaba in that plan, hey, fake your death. We're running off. That's the plan.
Is that what your interpretation is, or what actually is
No,
supposed to be
that's
the
what's implied. Even in the
storyline?
musical, that's what's implied.
Okay. I admittedly I missed that, and I guess that does change things a little bit.
Because
I did.
the whole point Fiero goes on the journey, and again, it's also why they don't show his face. He's not out to kill Elphaba, even though he has to pretend like he is. He's there to save her.
Okay.
Well, and technically, I guess she said she saves herself because she fakes her death, and he's not
Because
actually there for it.
I remember her getting the letter. Like I remember that happening. I just didn't. Maybe that's my fault, and maybe that's just because that's kind of the point that I
Yeah.
started to check out of, like, okay, we're just kind of breezing through everything. And I guess that's another example. It's the fact that I didn't pick up on it means that to me that wasn't a good setup that really made sense. Like there, I'm not. I,
On rewatch, it's easier because you know what it means and you can pick up on it easier, but it's a harder thing to pick up on. I can see how it's a harder thing to pick up when you don't know what it means at all. Like there's another moment in the same scene. Fiero is talking about his, I think it's his right hand in the film. He's talking about his right hand, and he says like, "Oh, it's all better, it's all good." Do you know why he says that? It's probably you're not going to know the reason why because they don't show it in the movie, but it's a Wizard of Oz specific thing in the Wizard of Oz movie, and I'm pretty sure it's in the books, the Wicked Witch by for because the reason Dorothy throws the water at the Wicked Witch, originally she was just gonna leave. The Wicked
it was
Witch
fire.
traps it was fire. She puts fire on the Scarecrow's arm and he starts burning. And so that's why whenever it's like, oh, see, it's good as new, it's fine.
Hmm.
You know? Uh
Well,
that's
and
the
I
reason
think
why.
that's where, like, I'm gonna be honest. I think that the only way that I could fix my enjoyment of this movie is make a Wizard of Oz movie with these characters, and then I'll watch the first 75% of this movie, stop, watch that Wizard of Oz movie, and
Yeah,
then come back for the last 25% of the movie. Like, that's the only real way. And again, maybe that's just like, oh, you don't have good memory. You should have known that. Here's the thing, though. The original Wizard of Oz movie and every Wizard of Oz movie that's been made is not the telling of Wizard of Oz that they are interpreting in
sure.
this movie. So therefore, yes, there are references, but that story is not being told with all of these moments in mind. I would
Sure.
have to go and read the book. So the only way that I think that could be fixed is if I go and I either read the book, which is fine. I actually have an interest in reading the book now because I want to see how it explains things differently. But the only other way is you make a Wizard of Oz movie with these characters to give me that setup,
Right.
because all of these setup moments mean nothing when the story that they're supposed to be interpreting is a book that I haven't read, and the only movie interpretations are not the same versions. Because in the movie interpretations, the Tin Man is not this guy. It's not the same guy. They're all supposed to be people that Dorothy knows, and that's not the story that they're telling here.
Right. Well, again, that's why this is such a unique thing for this musical because it entrusts that the viewer knows the story of Wizard of Oz, and it's almost to its detriment. On a stage play, perfectly fine, it works. Nobody's really going to argue about it because it's already a long play as it is. You want to get through it as quickly as possible, but you get the nuance, you get the character, whatever. Done and done. In a movie in which you can extend everything out, like we've said, it creates problems because I get that you're trying to save a reveal or you're trying to save this from like being revealed, but it's at the cost of not extending certain scenes that really should be for a movie, especially for an audience that in today's society really needs it in a movie like this. And that's just how
Well,
it is.
here's the unfortunate thing. It's like let's talk about some positives after this because we keep dogging on this movie. And again, I keep saying that the first 75% of this movie is really good without saying why. But that's just because, again,
Right.
I do feel like that last 25% is so like bad that it just it makes it hard for me to look back. But the last negative thing I will say is how do I put this? I love subtle storytelling. I really do, and I feel like the end of this movie was trying to get by on a show don't tell situation of subtle storytelling where, again, that note scene where they show you something, or they have a little moment over here like with the hand thing and all of these callbacks and references where they're kind of showing you the connections and showing you these character beats without telling you. And if done right, I love that stuff. And I feel like that's what a lot of people are going to say that really like this story is, oh, well, the only reason you don't like it and you feel it was rushed is because you didn't pick up on the nuance and the character moments. I think they just did it bad. I think that's just the open and shut of it is, yes, there was subtle storytelling in here, but because they rushed through the subtle storytelling, it wasn't subtle. It was kind of like a set up, move on, set up, move on, set up, move on. It was like you're
Sure.
throwing like bird feed at the birds. Like it was like kind of like a boom, 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 get it done. And the breadcrumbs are really small, so it's subtle, but you're still throwing it at me, and it didn't feel good. But moving on to like the positives and what the like 75% of the movie is, again, the set design, very, very good. I like all this setup with the characters. I like the twist with the God, I wish I remembered character names, but I'm so tired and hungry right now. Glinda's or not Glinda, Elphaba's sister
Nessa Rose.
and Nessa Rose. I really like the setup and the change in personality that has with
Yeah.
like she never knew that their father hated Glenda or hated Elphaba,
Right.
and she never knew any of these things were going on, and she always wanted to be able to stand up for herself. So her kind of morphing into being a lot more on the evil side, I think
Right.
makes a lot of sense. And I really love that setup for the character. I don't love
Right.
the payoff, but I'll try not to harp on that too much. I really like the setup that we have with, again, Elphaba and the princess relationship is easily like my favorite thing in this movie. Like I liked what they set up in the first movie because they didn't really like give us much. It was all obviously
Right.
set up. I really do like the payoff though. Like I think that is the one thing that even though I didn't pick up on the subtleness in the note and I do have problems with that, I do like the payoff of them being able to be happy together and run off into the sand dunes and just be out there.
Yeah, look, and again, I really love the relationship between Elphaba and Glinda. That is the highlight of the both these films. They're both shown very well, and they're both executed very well. Uh, the thing that scares me, I think, with this film, and especially because you already know this film is going to make a ton of money, and I read a report as I was walking out of the theater that Ariana Grande at the premiere for this movie said that they were potentially making a Wicked 3. I don't First off, I don't know if this is true or not. I don't know where the books actually end in, like, correlation to the musical. I don't know if the books end right where this finale is, where she runs off with Fiona, or if there's more after that. If there is, I'm gonna be completely honest, I don't wanna see that story. You told these stories because it was based off the beloved musical from Broadway. I'm not saying you can't make something new and have it be good. I'm sure you can, but that's not necessarily something that's gonna draw me to the theater all as much as opposed to going to hear the songs that I really loved to hear and that I really wanted to see, see the characters be brought to life that I knew from the musical all that time. If you
My
do
own
it, it doesn't piss me off, but if you do it, it's not something that's gonna excite me all that much.
my only hope, and I totally agree with you, if they continue the story from where it ended to another story, I'm gonna be honest, I might not even watch it. Like I genuinely, even for the podcast, I might not even watch it. However, what will get me is if Wicked 3 is Wizard of Oz, but with these characters. Like, I actually would love to see that movie.
It won't be. I can already tell you that much. If they're gonna remake Wizard of Oz, they're just gonna remake Wizard of Oz, which I don't want them to do. I'm actually glad that of all the things that haven't been remade today, that still stands the test of time. Singing in the Rain still stands the test of time. Like those are two of the only musical off the top of my head that have not been remade yet. Um, Cabaret is another one. I'm trying to think of like certain films that I know for a fact that have or haven't been remade yet. And those are like films that like just haven't. And I don't know if it's because people haven't wanted to tackle them yet, but I also don't see Wizard of Oz specifically being anything new, uh, or like any new concept for it to come out soon, considering that they just did Wicked. And I again I don't know if they're gonna go beyond that.
I don't know. Again, I personally would be interested in seeing a remake of Wizard of Oz, but only if they did it where it's not a remake of the movies, it is just a direct telling of the source material,
Sure.
because the source material is what these movies are based off of, and it would
Right.
give us hopefully that missing link that I'm feeling that I have with this movie.
Sure.
But again, if for whatever reason there is a Wicked 3 that is just a continuation where we see them run off into the sunset and we're having to watch Glinda manage like Emerald City, like, no, I don't have
Sure.
any, like, that just feels like the most unnecessary sequel of all time,
Well,
even if it's based in the book.
and again, I guess technically you could watch the Wizard of Oz movie from the 30s and Wicked and say they're the same universe. I guess technically you could. There's just a lot of logical errors, and it's not even like it's not Scarecrow, it's not Dorothy, it's and not even Cowardly Lion. It's purely the Tin Man. That's the only logical one where you're like, that doesn't make any sense. He
Yep.
would be out for revenge, and he would have said that off the bat. Uh I guess the thing is, you could say like, "Oh, he's going to the wizard to see if the wizard can fix him," because Bach wouldn't at the time think, "Oh, the wizard has no power." He would genuinely believe that the wizard has power, therefore he could fix Bach to give him a heart. Maybe that's the logical conclusion you could come to. I don't know. The bigger thing is like you playing a game of hypotheticals at that point. I also just don't want
Yeah.
them to remake Wizard of Oz because I love that original movie so much, and I don't think
Well,
you
and
could without it
don't
being just as good.
here's the thing, like, again, this is like the whole example, like the argument that we had off camera about like the Running Man movie and whether or not it's a remake or a retelling. I They don't need to remake the original Wizard of Oz, because the original Wizard of Oz doesn't follow the book one for one. All they need to do is make a new movie that
Yeah,
directly follows the book. And I think
yeah,
that would be the only acceptable thing of, yes,
yes,
they don't need to remake the original movie because we already have that story and that story still holds up to this day. However, there is another story that can be told that is
sure.
very similar, but ultimately very different, clearly very different, because we recontextualize everything we know about every character in these movies, mainly the core characters. The only one that doesn't get recontextualized is Dorothy. Dorothy is the only one, and that's
Yeah.
just because we don't get any of Dorothy's story, because this isn't Dorothy's story. And I like how you called out, like, yeah, we don't even see Dorothy's face in this movie. Like, we see like a side profile, but like realistically, that could be me in a wig for all you know. Like, you
Right.
really don't.
Well, and again, Dorothy's character motivations stay the same regardless. She just wants to get home. She is a girl who wants to get home. Even Glinda will say, like, "Hey, let the girl go." Like, she is just a girl from Kansas. She wants to go home. Um, and that's the whole point of it. I am
Here's the thing. I'd be curious if and I'm never going to do this, but if it exists out there, I would be very interested to read a, call it a single book, call it a book series, where you get Wicked Act 1 as its own book and it just exists out there. And then you get the start of Wicked Act 2, but you continue and you tell us the story of Wizard of Oz mixed in with the events of Wicked, where you don't read romance books, but I read a lot of romance books. And it's very common in romance books to switch perspectives between characters, especially between your
sure.
two main love interests. Give me something like that for this story so that I can see all, like, maybe I'm the only one that wants this and maybe people will say, "Oh, that's not necessary." But for someone like me, I feel like it is, where if you interwove all of these stories in kind of like a continuous, like all of Wicked Act 2, which is a prequel to Wizard of Oz, and then you get the Wizard of Oz, but you don't get the Wizard of Oz standalone. You get to see, like, view it as like the love interest of like Dorothy and her gang, and then the villain being Elphaba. But we get to see both of those perspectives as they interweave with each other, and then you can end the movie or the series with the end of Wicked that goes beyond Dorothy's story. I
Yeah,
think
and
that would be interesting.
that's not a new thing by any means. I mean, George R. R. Martin did that for Game of Thrones. Before I say what I'm going to say as the example, you did finish season 1, right? Like that's where we ended off. You had finished season 1.
No,
You didn't even finish season 1.
I have like 2 episodes left.
Okay. So I can't use my example then. I was going to use an example about something about how it was from a different character's perspective, but it's technically about the character that isn't the perspective of. I don't know. It's weird. Yeah, I guess they could do that, and I would read it. It would be fine. I guess it's just not something I don't see that's ever going to get made. I don't think
Oh
anybody
no,
has
I'm not
the
saying it
care
is. I'm
to.
just saying it would be interesting because I feel like that is exactly what I'm looking for to, like, I guess, fix my problems with this movie.
Well,
And
here's what I was going to say, because this is what I was going to say earlier. I implore you to watch it again now that you've had your now that you've taken your medicine, your healthy dose of vitamins. You can go back in knowing exactly what happens. It will be a little easier the second go through. I'm not saying the pacing problem gets easier, that will stay the same, but everything else, again, like the Fiero incident, uh, s- it's not all of it, but like the relationship between Glinda and Elphaba gets fixed towards the end a little bit. And you, now that you know the subtleties that you may not have known in the first, it'll improve on rewatch. This is a film that's going to do a lot better on rewatch than it is straight out of the gate. The pacing
I
issue is the
mean,
one thing that they're not going to fix, because they just can't. That's genuinely a filmmaking movie issue that you just can't fix.
I think the problem is, though, like, that is my one and only problem. It's just that problem is so prevalent for me that, like, I will probably rewatch this movie, whether that be in theaters or at home. I know I said I never want to, but like, I'll give it one more rewatch just to see.
It's
I think
also just the out of theater reaction. You're gonna say that. That's just how it is.
I think my genuine problem is, though, is like, again, I know I haven't focused on why I think that for. I mean, I have said why I think that for 75% of the movie is really good is because uh, the reason I believe the first 75% of this movie is really good, and the reason I don't feel the need to dive all that deep into it, is because the reason the first 75% of this movie is incredible is because Wicked 1 is incredible. And this is just like everything from the pacing, from the acting, from the songs, from the storytelling, all of it just is, again, it is a direct flow continuation of the story. It all just keeps being incredible. I feel everything for the characters. I think everything they're setting up and the big reveals. It's just once you get to that point where you mix in the Wizard of Oz in there, which is a missing piece for this story, that's where the pacing just gets thrown out of it. So, like, the first 75% of the movie is incredible because Wicked is incredible. But then the last 25% of this movie is bad is because you're telling two different stories half-heartedly and don't connect them all that well because you're kind of just running to the finish line.
Right. Yeah. Um. Yeah. No. I agree wholeheartedly. And look, it sounds like we're just beating around the bush with the same thing here. Again, like, I can't say this. Like, the first movie, in my opinion, is close to perfect as perfect can be. It's really damn good. It is one of the best movies of last year. One of the best movie musicals I've ever seen. The second one starts off the same path, even though the tone's different. It's handled with care. It's very well written. The things they do add, whereas they're unnecessary, they're not a total drag. It literally is just, it's the same problem the musical had. It's the pacing of the last few minutes of the thing, and it's unfortunate because that's the payoff for everything that goes on in both movies. And so it just makes it harder when you, especially when you watch the first time, it's harder to look at it and do that. On rewatch, I think it gets easier. But because I know this is what people are going to care about more. Wicked for good. Did I enjoy my time? Did I want to kill myself? I had a great time with it. I did not feel like I needed to kill myself. it was it was a fun time. There was a lot of emotions. They did the right things. When they did the things right, they nailed it. They had it right on the money. Again, it's just the last 20 minutes that should have been fine-tuned for film, that could have brought it home and made it just a perfect act one, act two.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I just think that those things matter a lot more to me because, like, I'll end it off with this. A big question in mainly TV series, because TV series have a lot more buildup than a movie does the ending to a TV series ruin an incredible TV series? And I think that's a very difficult question to have because it's very anecdotal. And it all depends on what the ending is supposed to pay off. Like, for instance, the ending of a sitcom. Does that ruin the sitcom? No, because 9 times out of 10, the ending of a sitcom doesn't matter for the rest of the story that you set up. Like, you're not paying anything off. So you can still enjoy however many seasons and then not feel like the ending ruined the rest of the show. It could be a bad ending and ruin the ending, but not ruin the rest of the show. I think when it comes to this, I don't think that Wicked's ending ruins the first Wicked. I do think that the ending of Wicked for Good almost ruins the rest of the movie, because this entire movie is very specifically setting up. It's a setup moment. All
Yeah.
Everything that the first 75% of this movie is solely set up. And if that's the story that you're telling, you need to pay off that setup. And I did
Yeah.
not feel like they paid off that setup.
Can I use an example really quickly that actually is kind of perfect as far as something that loses steam at the final check mark? I got two examples. One that's pretty good and one that is really good. First one being Game of Thrones. I'm not going to
I was
spoil
literally
it.
gonna say, I swear to God, if you bring up Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones is in the history books as one of the worst endings of all time to any piece of media ever. I'm not comparing this as far as like quality to Game of Thrones. If I was watching, this would be a 10 out of 10 compared to what Game of Thrones gave us in that finale. Trust me, I think everybody would agree. They would say screw the pacing issues. At least they had story and emotion. At least you did get to an end goal that mattered. Game of Thrones ended poorly, but it's also because they rushed through that entire final season as to why that finale is bad. Another good example is How I Met Your Mother, which actually is a completely different thing. They did rush through the ending, but it was in a different way of saying, okay, the entire 24 episode season, mind you, is taking place over 3 days. It's at a wedding. And then the finale, which finally takes you back to the city, it's wrapping up the story, ruins the ending within the last 2 scenes of the entire show. It crashes and burns ferociously. It is awful. And that is also regarded as one of the worst endings of all time to any TV show ever. And it was the last episode. Here, it's the movie is really good, and it's the last second of it. It almost ruins it. Again, I'm not comparing it like as like quality wise to How Much Your Mother or Game of Thrones. Obviously, this is far superior. It still ends, mind you, and it ends at least with something that you're like, I guess that makes sense. Good enough. The other shows ended and it didn't make sense at all. But that's kind of like the best example to like throw at the wall for this is just, yeah.
Yeah,
But
I think that's fair.
had a good time. Probably will watch it again with my mother because she's probably gonna want to see it.
Yeah, I'm not. This is not a movie that I'm gonna rush to go see again. Like, I don't know if I'll see this again while it's still in theaters, but I could be convinced, I guess, to give it a second watch just to see if it makes the movie better, because I loved the movie so much, like the first movie, that I really was so excited going into this. And I think again, that's another reason why my disappointment is so much more palpable, is just because they had so much
Sure.
phenomenal setup that for me they just ruined, and
Sure.
therefore makes it really hard to go, oh my God, I want to see that again to see if it changes my enjoyment, because like they already had their shot and they didn't nail it. What is a rewatch really going to do? Maybe it'll bump it like 2%, but is that 2% worth going through it again? But
I
we'll
know
see
that
down
this
the line.
is I know that this is horrible, especially because when you look at critics and audience scores alike, both are like wildly different. I would rather rewatch Now You See Me 3 in theaters again before I watch Wicked for Good in theaters again. I'll watch Wicked for Good again but I'm not going to rush to see it in theaters. I would rather rush to see Now You See Me 3 in theaters again than I would Wicked for Good. And I do acknowledge this. I do think Wicked for Good is superior to Now You See Me 3. And I
I
like
think the
Now You
first
See Me 3.
75% of
Yeah,
Wicked.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Anyways, let's stop wrapping it up. Next week is going to be a big one. It's actually like it's probably one of the biggest podcast episodes we've ever done in terms of like, I don't want to say importance, but we are talking about the first whatever's released. I think it's first 3 episodes of the ending of 4 episodes of the ending of Stranger Things. We will be doing that as they release. So technically not weekly, because they're doing it really weird and there's like 2 weeks and then whatever. But we will be, every time Stranger Things comes up, we will talk about it. So that is something to look forward to. And the other thing that we're talking about next week is Zootopia 2. And here's the thing. I know Carson is probably not super excited to watch Zootopia 2, especially when compared to Stranger Things. I'm going to go ahead and spoil it for you now. The red carpet happened and reviews are already starting to come out. People are glazing that. People are saying this movie is miles better than the first one. Like, people are saying that this movie is an all-time Disney movie. So I'm so intrigued to see why people think Zootopia 2 is an all-time Disney movie.
People also said that about The Flash, so we'll see what happens.
No. That was specifically James Gunn before the movie was finished. We're talking about reviewers after the movie's been finished and released. That is a little bit different, but
I guess
we'll see. We'll see. I'm excited nonetheless. Anything to close us out here?
I want to go to bed.
Yeah, I'm gonna make some food and eat something, and then I have some editing to do, and then I'm gonna go to bed. Unfortunately, all of my shorts are going to be late today because I have only filmed and edited 1, and I have 5 others that need to go up, that should go up tonight. They're not gonna go up tonight.
Brother, just take the day off. Nobody's gonna kill you over it. Just save yourselves, brother.
Hey, we're almost at 1,000 followers on TikTok, so there are people who care.
There are people who care.
And we are now consistently getting views on the podcast, which is kind of crazy. But that all being said, thank you for the 5 people that are it's still 5 people, but thank you to those 5 people that are watching and listening. That wraps up episode what is this, 38 of the Nerdy Nimrods podcast, something around there.
Somewhere around there.
The only podcast on the internet where you can watch your 2 favorite Nimrods talk all things nerdy. You can find us on all social media platforms at Nerdy Nimrods. I mainly talk about anime on there. I talk about a lot of anime. I post like 20 some odd times. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts. We also have a Clips channel, Nerdy Nimrods Clips, where we post the best moments from the podcast on there, mainly just our reviews condensed down. We also have our podcast hosting platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, all the podcast hosting platforms you can think of. And I can guarantee you the ones that you don't even know exist, we're also on those. We probably, the one dude that still uses freaking Pandora, we're there for you, homie. We're on Pandora just for you. But with all that being said, let us know your thoughts on this movie in the comments. Drop a like and follow while you're there. And as always, stay nerdy.